You know, capitalism is a great system. I love it. But it exploits the weak. It always does.
Since the Federal Reserve has come into being in 1913, illegally, without a constitutional amendment, by bribing a few senators during Christmas vacation, they turned over the most important power that the American government has, the creation and issuance of money, to a private bank. Through that private bank issuing money, they have destroyed this country. They have destroyed the purchasing power of the money in this country. They've created social programs that are destroying this country. They have a machine that can make all the money. It's not about money. It's about control. It's about their vision of how they want to see the world. What we want doesn't matter anymore. It's their agenda. It's their plans that matter. So the ultimate goal that these people have in mind is the goal to create a one-world government run by the banking industry, where everybody has an RFID chip implanted in them. All money is to be in those chips, right? There'll be no more cash. And this is given me straight from Rockefeller himself. This is what they want to accomplish. And all money will be in your chips. And so, instead of having cash, anytime you have money in your chip, they can take out whatever they want to take out whenever they want to. And you become a slave. You become a serf to these people. That's their goal. That's their intentions. How they control the media, they control the government, and they're all in bed together. So you're fighting all this propaganda all the time, and it's a very difficult fight.
These international bankers and Rockefeller Standard Oil interests control the majority of newspapers and the columns of these papers to club into submission or drive out of public office officials who refuse to do the bidding of the powerful, corrupt cliques which compose the invisible government. Just one day before, in the New York Times, the mayor of New York, John Hylan, quoted Roosevelt and blasted those he saw as taking control of America, its political machinery, and its press. The warning of Theodore Roosevelt has much timeliness today, for the real menace of our republic is this invisible government which, like a giant octopus, sprawls its slimy length over city, state, and nation. It seizes in its long and powerful tentacles our executive officers, our legislative bodies, our schools, our courts, our newspapers, and every agency created for the public protection. To depart from mere generalizations, let me say that at the head of this octopus are the Rockefeller Standard Oil interest and a small group of powerful banking houses generally referred to as the international bankers. The little coterie of powerful international bankers virtually run the United States government for their own selfish purposes. They practically control both parties, write political platforms, make cat's paws of party leaders, use the leading men of private organizations, and resort to every device to place in nomination for high public office only such candidates as will be amenable to the dictates of corrupt big business. These international bankers and Rockefeller Standard Oil interests control the majority of newspapers and magazines in this country.
And now, in a desperate attempt to fill 24 hours of programming, here's some bullshit that happened somewhere today. We've got some footage here of the bullshit, which began just after 3 o'clock this afternoon, when residents in this neighborhood were shocked to see this fairly common thing happening. An attractive witness described the event in breathless terms.
I went to my window and I was like, whoa, there's some bullshit happening.
That happened right over there. I'm an older man, so you can trust what I say.
Authorities in special uniforms rushed to the scene to stand around while our cameras filmed them. Our reporter Keith Collins joins us now live from the scene of the bullshit through the use of expensive technology. Good to be with you again, Keith. We have a colorful graphic here that shows instances of bullshit like this are on the rise. Is that right?
Yes, although why is unclear. Some say it's because of one fucking reason. Others say it's because of some other fucking reason. I talked to this random expert on the subject who told me this thing you're about to hear him say right after he points at a piece of paper.
I spent my entire life attending the nation's most prestigious schools to talk about bullshit like this. I'm really just happy to be on TV.
Now let's see if we can drag this out a little longer by showing emails written by some of our viewers. I once saw some stuff kind of like the shit you're talking about happen. I have nothing more to add. Another person says, I am angry that things like this happen. I get mad about every bullshit thing I see. So obviously a lot of opinions there to make this story seem somewhat meaningful.
Oh, absolutely, Glenn. This bullshit has some broader implications. Here's a list of tips on how to avoid bullshit happening to you.
And here's some footage of Congress.
Yes, I see that.
Well, thank you, Keith. Let us know if there are any updates on this bullshit story from there.
There's no way there will be.
Very good. We'll check back with you in an hour anyway.
I'm just some fucking guy.
When we return, we'll look at live footage of a car chase taken from a helicopter and free associate about what's going on.
It is not our own citizens only who are to receive the bounty of our government. More than 8 million of the stock of this bank are held by foreigners. Is there no danger to our liberty and independence in a bank that in its nature has so little to bind it to our country? Controlling our currency, receiving our public monies, and holding thousands of our citizens' independence would be more formidable and dangerous than a military power of the enemy. If government would confine itself to equal protection and, as heaven does its rains, shower its favor alike on the high and the low, the rich and the poor, it would be an unqualified blessing. In the act before me, there seems to be a wide and unnecessary departure from these just principles.
Later that year, in July 1832, Congress was unable to override Jackson's veto. Now Jackson had to stand for re-election. Jackson took his argument directly to the people. For the first time in U.S. history, Jackson took his presidential campaign on the road. Before then, presidential candidates stayed at home and looked presidential. His campaign slogan was Jackson and no bank. The National Republican Party ran Senator Henry Clay against Jackson. Despite the fact that the bankers poured over $3 million into Clay's campaign, Jackson was reelected by a landslide in November of 1832. Despite his presidential victory, Jackson knew the battle was only beginning. The hydra of corruption is only scotched, not dead, said the newly elected president. Jackson ordered his new Secretary of Treasury, Lewis McLean, to start removing the government's deposits from the second bank and start placing them in state banks. But McLean refused to do so. Jackson fired him and appointed William J. Duane as the new Secretary of the Treasury. Duane also refused to comply with the president's requests, and so Jackson fired him as well and then appointed Roger B. Taney to the office. Taney did withdraw government funds from the bank starting on October 1st, 1833. Jackson was jubilant. I have it chained. I'm ready with screws to draw every tooth and then the stumps. But the bank was not yet done fighting. Its head, Nicholas Biddle, used his influence to get the Senate to reject Taney's nomination. Then, in a rare show of arrogance, Biddle threatened to cause a depression if the bank was not rechartered.
This worthy president thinks that because he has scalped Indians and imprisoned judges, he is to have his way with the bank. He is mistaken.
Next, in an unbelievable fit of honesty for a central banker, Biddle admitted that the bank was going to make money scarce to force Congress to restore the bank.
Nothing but widespread suffering will produce any effect on Congress. Our only safety is in pursuing a steady course of firm restriction. And I have no doubt that such a course will ultimately lead to restoration of the currency and the recharter of the bank.
What a stunning revelation. Here was the pure truth, revealed with shocking clarity. Biddle intended to use the money contraction power of the bank to cause a massive depression until America gave in. Unfortunately, this has happened time and time again throughout U.S. history and is about to happen again in today's world. Nicholas Biddle made good on his threat. The bank sharply contracted the money supply by calling in old loans and refusing to extend new ones. A financial panic ensued, followed by a deep depression. Naturally, Biddle blamed Jackson for the crash, saying that it was caused by the withdrawal of federal funds from the bank. Unfortunately, his plan worked well. Wages and prices sagged. Unemployment soared along with business bankruptcies. The nation quickly went into an uproar. Newspaper editors blasted Jackson in editorials. The bank threatened to withhold payments, which then could be made directly to key politicians for their support. Within only months, Congress assembled in what was called the panic session. 6 months after he had withdrawn funds from the bank, Jackson was officially censured by a resolution which passed the Senate by a vote of 26 to 20. It was the first time a president had ever been censured by Congress. Jackson lashed out at the bank. "You are a den of vipers. I intend to rout you out, and by eternal God, I will rout you out." America's fate teetered on a knife edge. If Congress could muster enough votes to override Jackson's veto, the bank would be granted another 20-year monopoly or more over America's money. Time enough to consolidate its already great power. Then a miracle occurred. The governor of Pennsylvania came out supporting President Jackson and strongly criticized the bank. On top of that, Biddle had been caught boasting in public about the bank's plan to crash the economy. Suddenly, the tide shifted. In April of 1834, the House of Representatives voted 134 to 82 against rechartering the bank. This was followed up by an even more lopsided vote to establish a special committee to investigate whether the bank had caused the crash. When the investigating committee arrived at the bank's door in Philadelphia, armed with a subpoena to examine the books, Biddle refused to give them up. Nor would he allow inspection of correspondence with congressmen relating to their personal loans and advances he'd made to them. He also refused to testify before the committee back in Washington. On January 8, 1835, Jackson paid off the final installment on the national debt, which had been necessitated by allowing the banks to issue currency for government bonds rather than simply issuing treasury notes without such debt. He was the only president to ever pay off the debt. A few weeks later, on January 30th, 1835, an assassin by the name of Richard Lawrence tried to shoot President Jackson. But by the grace of God, both pistols misfired. Lawrence was later found not guilty by reason of insanity. After his release, he bragged to friends that powerful people in Europe had put him up to the task and promised to protect him if he were caught. The following year, when its charter ran out, the Second Bank of the United States ceased functioning as the nation's central bank. Biddle was later arrested and charged with fraud. He was tried and acquitted, but died shortly thereafter while still tied up in civil suits. After his second term as president, Jackson retired here to the Hermitage outside of Nashville to live out his life. He is still remembered here for his determination to kill the bank. In fact, he killed it so well that it took the money changers 77 years to undo the damage. When asked what his most important accomplishment had been, Jackson replied, "I killed the bank."
Hedge funds are enormously powerful now in the financial system. There's a lot of them. They manage a great deal of money. They're not regulated by and large. They're usually in offshore jurisdictions where they are not regulated. I would say that the top 3 trading institutions in the US Treasury market, which is the largest securities market in the world, are in fact hedge funds. They're not banks.
The only serious risk for a hedge fund is that if it consistently loses money, the backers will take their funds back.
You can lose money. You're allowed to make a mistake once, but if it's a bad one, you're gone. I mean, it's a very fragile. I mean, there is high return in that industry, yes, but you could also very quickly lose the appetite for risk that clients have in you or the interest of clients. So no, it's very severe. Nothing is taken for granted because you are the ultimate risk taker.
And you here manage how much money now?
Now we have around $4.2 billion.
Using funds from wealthy investors and huge amounts of borrowed cash, colossal fortunes have been accumulated by hedge fund managers. In 2006, an estimated 10 of them earned more than $500 million each, and 5 are thought to have trousered more than $900 million in that single year. They included George Soros, a consistent winner who famously made a killing when he sold the pound on a colossal scale and helped to force sterling out of the European exchange rate mechanism in 1992.
The average person did not get much benefit from the boom, the super boom, in the last 20 years. It's really the people like me who have really earned enormous amounts of money.
Every soul will know its pain when they arrive at the pearly gate.
The spirit of an age can be captured in its art. So perhaps this is the symbol of all that debt-fueled financial excess. Damien Hirst's For the Love of God. The glittering death's head, encrusted with 8,601 diamonds, is said to have been sold to an investment consortium for £50 million. But the details of its sale are shrouded in secrecy, as are so many of the transactions of the new super-rich. What's its intrinsic value? There's quite an argument about that. Who actually owns it? No one seems quite sure. In many ways, the glitter and the ambiguity seems to capture perfectly the spirit of this age of easy money.
Warning. The concerns were sparked by Japan's move to lower the yen in pursuit of better exports, causing fears of a massive chain reaction as other nations follow suit. Altis Igor Piskunov reports.
An economy not so far away. Actually, the global economy is on the verge of a currency war. Let me paint a quick picture for you. Japan, where the newly elected prime minister is pushing for a more aggressive central bank policy, has been dropping the yen. It went down by 11% since December. Meanwhile, in the European Union, experts say Europe has fired the first shell. EU financial authorities warn the rising euro is threatening the economy. Despite the debt and Eurozone crisis, austerity measures and so on, the euro grew by 7% in the last 6 months. So it is possible the EU will start dropping it also. Now, the United States have been printing bucks for the last 5 years to support the markets, but that also makes the dollar cheaper. Washington has been looking over the shoulder at China, which holds the majority of U.S. foreign debt, and Beijing is also accused of holding back its currency. The reason why they do that is when a currency is dropped, the export becomes cheaper, makes the country more compatible. But it isn't applauded by other countries, which may retaliate by dropping their currency. So it's kind of like a domino effect. But the last time a major currency war happened was during the Great Depression era in the 1930s, which resulted in a slowdown of international trade, and all was part of the lead up to World War II. But that's not all. If the exports become cheaper, the imports become more expensive. So ordinary people buy less. And when they travel abroad, that's more expensive as well. So basically, that kind of worsens their their quality of life. So that leads to public disapproval, unrest, and so on. So it's kind of like a domino effect. Like I said, the dominoes are all there in place, and that's why Russia is so worried about it. It currently chairs the G20. Its financial ministers are set to meet in Moscow next month, and we should expect quite a skirmish.
I'm Juliana McCannis, filling in for Clifford Baines, who messed with the wrong people and got himself involved in some serious shit. With all economic factors indicating the U.S. is heading for a prolonged recession, some experts are suggesting that the government should stop dumping all of our money into an enormous hole. Is it time to close the national money hole?
That kind of talk is alarmist and irresponsible.
America needs the money hole.
Right. Driving truckloads of money out into the New Mexico desert and dumping it into a massive pit is one of America's greatest traditions.
Frankly, it's a national treasure.
Look, no reasonable person is advocating that we are going to stop destroying money. But the American people earn that money. They have the right to decide how it should be destroyed.
Well, so you are in favor of personal money holes?
Yes, people should be able to dump money into a hole in their backyard or flush it down the toilet. Let the free market decide the most efficient way of destroying money.
My father worked 2 jobs so he'd have money to put in the money hole, and he never complained.
Now, you can't depend on private money holes to destroy that money.
Duncan's right. I mean, some of this money could blow away. Some of it may not be correctly buried. I mean, there's too many variables.
That's why the government pours gasoline into the money hole and lights it on fire to make sure all the money is destroyed.
I love the money fire.
It's just like they say, you have to throw money in a hole and set it on fire to make money.
Okay, but find the cheapest way to destroy that money, like shredding it up and feeding it to hogs.
Tell that to the digger who's worked the graveyard shift for 20 years. Digging the hole is all he knows.
The sheer number of shovelers that it takes to maintain that
hole. But if we're talking about closing holes, I mean, what about the soldier hole? How about the energy hole? I mean, I can't believe that closing the money hole is even on the table.
Why are you pushing this pro-hole agenda? Is the money hole lobby paying you?
I resent that accusation. I do not take money from special interests, and if I did, I would throw it right in the hole because I am a patriot.
If you love America, you throw money in its hole.
I'm trying to understand, with the neighborhood, why do we have to move? Why can't you build around us and do what you need to do instead of trying to, 1, burn us out, and 2, trying to take us out? And then thirdly, I want to know what is going to be done to that land once you move us out? Because it seems like your downsizing is just another form of segregation. And in my 40 years of age, I thought my mom and them already been through that. And I don't want to have to go through it again. And if we don't understand that we who live in the city of Detroit have to stick together, or they're going to take this city away from us.
Look, we're dealing with complete evil. We're dealing with complete evil. And until the American people wake up and say, we don't want this evil in our country anymore, and we want to come back to a country of decency and goodness and integrity and honor, you know, we're going down that road. But just, folks, you know, all I can say is, you know, take our country back, restore the Constitution, don't let these bankers do this to us anymore. Stand up, don't be afraid of them, and do what you got to do. It takes all Americans to stand together, to stand tall, to mobilize and say, we're not going to take this anymore. I'm mad as hell. I'm not going to take it anymore. We're going to stand up and fight the battle. And you and I can't do this alone. We're just leaders of the thing. But other people have to join in with us and stand side by side, shoulder to shoulder, and say, I'm not going to take it anymore. That's what it's going to take to win this effort.
That's quite a wrap you're wearing. Perhaps I could get you some fluffy new slippers made from the heads of innocent and defenseless baby seals.
Who is this ghastly man?
Ace Ventura, pet detective. And you must be the Monopoly guy. Hey, thanks for the free parking.
Another activist, McGuire.
Activist, yes. Activist, yes.
Mr. Ventura, there's nothing wrong with enjoying the fruits of nature. You should try it sometime.
Alrighty then. You know something? You're right. La, da, 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 da. Oh, Da. Da da. Hey.
Do not pass go. Do not collect $200.
It's lovely, but I fancy myself in autumn.
And I'm never gonna dance again.